Good evening and welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan with the National Weather Service. And on this Monday, May 17th, 2021, we'll be taking a look at how the weather's shaping up here for your early week and take a look ahead as well into the following week. But otherwise, if you need additional weather information, you can always go to weather.gov/Alaska. There's many websites, not just the individual forecast offices, Fairbanks, Anchorage, and Juneau, that serve the state. But we also have a River Forecast Center in the Alaska Region Headquarters site, so there's a lot of information there to look at. Also, if you'd like a recorded forecast on the phone, 1-800-472-0391. And a programming note we want to pass along: coming up this week on Thursday, May 20th, the Alaska Weather TV show will air at 6:30 p.m. daily on KTOO 360 TV. So our friends there who get us through KTOO 360 TV instead of 7:30, the Alaska Weather Show will air at 6:30 daily now, starting this Thursday. Well, we continue to watch the river breakup situation, and the good news is across the southern half of the state, many areas, the upper Yukon, have opened up nicely. And as a result, we continue to see the river opening with the ice passing on by this weekend. And earlier today, we are looking for conditions at Galena and Alakanuk also doing pretty well there, the river. We'll continue to monitor downstream. Still, though, the north slope areas to the Arctic coast have plenty of ice, so those of you up there, keep an eye on the situation. But thus far, the way the temperatures have been, we've had mild daytime temperatures and cooler nights, so the melting hasn't been as rapid as it might be, and we certainly have not had any heavy precipitation fall within the Yukon Valley, so that's allowed for things to, at least the river breakup, to be relatively easy this year. But as always, we still need your help, and if you do live along one of these rivers, or you happen to be flying over especially a remote location, and you see something unusual or interesting, we always appreciate any reports, pictures, or videos, and you may submit them to nws.ar.aprfc@noaa.gov. Or if you see something more serious or unusual, you could call 1-800-847-1739 and speak with someone at the River Forecast Center, because we use your reports to help make decisions on different river products, including whether or not we need to issue any type of advisories or warnings. Otherwise, looking at the satellite imagery, things across the southeast, cloud cover is trying to break up a bit. Earlier today, we did have temperatures down around freezing, with some freezing fog that was reported at Klawock as well as Petersburg. We'll be flirting with a bit of that again there in the southeast tonight, some areas at least. Otherwise, across the interior, we continue to see some scattered instability showers develop along what we call a thermal low trough. And also even potential for isolated rumble of thunder, and that'll be the case as we head through the next couple of afternoons, especially south of the Yukon River, on up along portions of the eastern Glen and Alaska highways. Otherwise, another area we continue to see across the Arctic coast, north slope, low cloudiness with some areas of freezing fog and patchy light snow or flurries. Extensive fog continues across portions of the west coast in response to high pressure that's out over the eastern Bering Sea, creating a temperature aversion which traps that lower level moisture, keeps the low clouds and fog in place. And then finally, we're watching, if you look at the bottom of the screen, you can see some of the higher cloudiness associated with an area of low pressure that will be lifting northeastward up toward the eastern Aleutians and tip of the southwest peninsula as we head through Tuesday into Wednesday. But otherwise, here we have a trough of low pressure that lingering across the interior there and extends into northwest Canada, and along it we've seen some scattered light instability showers that have popped up with the daytime heating, and again, even the potential for a rumble of thunder. Higher elevations in the mountains continue to see some snow as temperatures aloft are colder. And along the southeast coast, still a few scattered light rain showers, patchy fog, but that's trying to break up a bit. And as we head to the north coast there, the north slope, we continue to see areas of freezing fog and patchy light snow or flurries. And then running down along the length of the west coast, along the Bering Strait, into Norton Sound and down toward Bristol, Kuskokwim Bays, we have areas of fog with high pressure out there over the eastern Bering Sea, and a hint of some rain way down to the south. Your screen there with the area of low pressure that will gradually be lifting northward here as we head through Tuesday and Wednesday. Overnight, look for any scattered instability showers across the interior to tend to dissipate. And there could be some breaks opening up in the cloud cover across parts of the southeast, where if that happens, they'll form some fog with temperatures approaching freezing. Still some patchy fog and some patchy light snow along the Arctic coast. As we go into Tuesday, we'll see the warming temperatures in the afternoon with isolated rumble of thunder possible along portions of the Yukon Valley and again toward the eastern end of the Glen, and as well as the Alaskan Highway between Fairbanks and as you get on down toward Northway. And high pressure will remain there across the west coast, eastern Bering. That will keep low cloudiness and some fog going. And then going into Wednesday, notice the low pressure there just south of the eastern Aleutians with an occluded front lifting northward. That'll bring in bands of light rain and some fog across southwest parts of the state. Meanwhile, still the potential for some scattered instability showers and maybe an isolated rumble of thunder there in through the southeast, especially along the Alcan as we head through the day on Wednesday with a little better conditions there across the southeast. So lows tonight will generally be in the mid-30s to near 40 across the southeast. So if any breaks, I could fill in with some fog with temperatures approaching the freezing mark in a few spots. Heading back toward the west, south central areas will generally see lows upper 30s to lower 40s. And then as we head into Tuesday afternoon, Talkeetna may be able to squeak out a reading up around or just above 60. Elsewhere, most everybody else will be in the 50s, with 59 there, the forecast at Haines and Juneau, and 58 at Anchorage, 49 though down to the southwest as you get to Chignik. And then for Wednesday morning, lows will generally be in the mid-30s to around 40, the southeast, and similarly throughout most of the south central areas. A few spots could be down around the freezing mark, such as at King Salmon, and then readings should be back up around 60 at Talkeetna on over toward Glen Allen Wednesday afternoon, and mid to even some upper 50s across the rest of the areas, including the southeast and Anchorage. Along the Arctic coast, lows tonight will be in the upper teens, lower 20s, generally around or just above freezing the Yukon Valley. And temperatures along the Arctic coast may approach 30 degrees in a few spots. Otherwise, the Yukon Valley is looking for highs mid-50s to around 60. And as we go into Wednesday morning, lows will generally be around or a bit above 20 there along the north slope and Arctic coast. And temperatures staying right around or just above freezing in the Yukon Valley, but in the west, readings still there in the as we get across the Seward Peninsula, still dipping down into the 20s. And high temperatures for Wednesday afternoon will be back up around 30 near the Arctic coast, and readings in the 50s to around 60 degrees, especially at Fairbanks and on up toward Fort Yukon. And then for the south west areas, we're looking for lows tonight along the Aleutians on up toward Kodiak Island in the upper 30s to near 40 degrees. Interior areas should stay just above freezing along the Kuskokwim and Yukon basins, but along the west coast, still readings down a degree or two below freezing. And then as we go through Tuesday afternoon, temperatures upper 40s, the lower Yukon and Kuskokwim valleys, but as you go further north, readings will warm into the 50s. And along the southwest coast in through the Aleutian, high temperatures will generally remain in the 40s with readings maybe upwards around, say, mid to upper 30s, or I'm sorry, mid to upper 40s there in the southwest tip, including Cold Bay and Sand Point. And then as we look at Wednesday morning, lows should generally be around freezing for the Kuskokwim Basin. and lows upper 30s along the Alaska Peninsula, and then temperatures Wednesday afternoon will be in the mid and upper 50s, fairly seasonable for this time of year for both the Yukon and Kuskokwim basins, and as you head upstream, with highs in the 40s along the Aleutian chain and the tip of the Southwest Peninsula. Quick check of the temperature outlook as we go into next week, May 23rd through the 27th. Temperatures may average slightly above normal, especially in the northwest, the Seward Peninsula, on up as we get toward Port Hope. And then looking at precipitation, precipitation may average slightly above normal in the west, again, especially the Seward Peninsula, down through the YK Delta. Otherwise, we don't anticipate any big changes coming up as we head toward the end of the month, not too far away from at least the official start of summer with the Memorial Day weekend here at the end of the month.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
In the aviation weather segment for today, for your planning purposes, the flying weather for Tuesday through Wednesday indicates we'll continue to see IFR conditions across the North Slope and Arctic coast, as well as along the west coast out into the east and northeast Bering, and out over portions of the open waters of the Gulf of Alaska. As we head into Tuesday afternoon, still some areas of IFR along the North Slope to Central Arctic coast. There could be a few isolated thunderstorms pop up with the daytime heating along portions of the Yukon River and also toward the east and southeast of Fairbanks, toward the Alcan border, and then back out across much of the Bering with high pressure there just off the west coast. There'll be areas of low cloudiness and some fog, and then IFR conditions creeping up from the North Pacific as low pressure will begin to lift northward just south there of the eastern Aleutians as we go through Wednesday. Wednesday morning, though, still IFR along the North Slope and Arctic coast, covering much of the northern portion of the Gulf of Alaska, even coming in a bit around the south end of the inner waterways, including Ketchikan, and then along the Alaska Peninsula on the Pacific side and off of the west coast in through much of the Bering and the eastern half of the Aleutians. For Wednesday afternoon, still IFR conditions up there along the Arctic coast and the North Slope. Could be isolated rumble of thunder, especially east and southeast of Fairbanks along the Alaska-Canadian border, and then again extending out along the Pacific side of the southwest peninsula as an occluded front lifts northward. So past conditions on Tuesday, AKwx will see IFR conditions in the morning, and those IFR conditions will tend to hold as you come out on the north end and toward the North Slope, with MVFR conditions developing and improving there for the south end. Again, the same thing, IFR, especially north end and as you travel north during the day, and then MVFR conditions arriving there during later morning and afternoon. For Lake Clark and Merrill, we are expecting MVFR conditions to improve to VFR by late morning afternoon. And then Tuesday, Rainy Pass, VFR becoming MVFR. There could be some cloud buildups perhaps. Also Windy Pass looking to be VFR becoming MVFR in the afternoon. Isabel should generally hold on to VFR conditions, as will Mentasta. And then as we head a little bit back toward the southwest, Tanita, MVFR to VFR. And right now, Portage is looking to remain VFR throughout the day on Tuesday, as will Chilkoot and White in the northern portion of the southeast panhandle. So freezing levels will generally be around or a bit above 4,000 feet across much of the southeast, with the exception around Yakutat into northwest Canada there. Could be around or a bit below 2,000 feet. Also an area a bit below 2,000 feet, the southern portion of the Gulf of Alaska into the North Pacific. And you can see higher freezing levels south of the Aleutians. That's in response to low pressure and an occluded front that'll be lifting northward and approaching the southwestern tip of the southwest peninsula here as we go through Wednesday. Icing potential exists in portions of the southeast between 3,000 and 10,000 feet, mainly the southern end of the waterways. 5,000 to 10,000 feet across the interior along the Yukon Valley, and that includes where there could be some scattered showers and isolated thunder. as low as 1,000 to 10,000 feet along the North Slope and Arctic coast, as well as out over the northern Bering, and then 5 to 15,000 feet the eastern Aleutians on up into the tip of the Southwest Peninsula. Jet stream level winds upwards to 50 knots over the southwest portion of the state, with some areas of 60 to near 70 knots from the tip of the Southwest Peninsula back out over the central Aleutians. Dropping down to 9,000 feet, we don't see too much, perhaps southeasterly winds to 40 knots there, the tip of the Southwest Peninsula and just west of the Alaska Range. And then for the 3,000 foot level, that low pressure system beginning to lift northward out of the North Pacific there, impacting the eastern Aleutians and the tip of the Southwest Peninsula. Southeast winds could be on the order of 40 to 50 knots, especially on the Pacific side. And then finally, a check of turbulence. We do not anticipate any significant turbulence expected on Tuesday, though there could be bumpy in spots where you encounter some cumulus buildups in the vicinity of isolated showers and thunderstorms. Otherwise, as always, make sure you check the latest forecast and conditions before you head out, and we wish you a very safe flight.
Hello again, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder with the National Weather Service with another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. And joining me today are not just one, but two people, both with the last name Stevens, which is even more fun, but no relation. We have Eric Stevens from Gina and George Stevens, who is a mechanical engineering student from the University of Alaska, Fairbanks. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Awesome. And today you guys brought a really cool toy, or I should say tool, with you. It's a sandbox, but why are you guys working on a sandbox?
Well, it's part of our senior design project, and we were approached by EPSCoR to build this for them. They had a proof of concept that they developed about a year ago, I think, and they wanted a more robust version that they could pack onto a plane and take places, and it's a handy learning tool for kids and adults.
So you're a mechanical engineering student. You've built a traveling sandbox for the experimental program to stimulate competitive research, EPSCoR, and Gina's facilitated this. But why do we need a traveling sandbox?
Well, the prototype was such a big hit that they decided they wanted another one, actually two, that that would be easier to travel with, possibly marketable even.
Okay, so this is a traveling sandbox that's got a lot of bits and pieces and a computer hooked up to it. What is the computer doing with the sand?
The computer actually uses a Kinect sensor to read the topography of the sand or the shape of the sand, and then the computer translates that into information which it projects using a projector onto the sand, showing topographical lines and which is representative of the shape of the sand.
Okay, so this is a live mapping tool?
Yeah. It's interactive. As you're moving your hands through it, it is actively following and changing the lines to fit what you're doing.
That sounds like something I could have in my backyard.
Yep.
It'd be a lot of fun. So you guys had to change the design a little bit to make this more Alaska-fied, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, how'd you do that?
Well, the original was made out of basically lumber and Simpson strong tie type stuff, and we rebuilt it to make it lighter and basically more transportable. We can pack it down to a fairly small size, and it can be loaded onto a plane and flown anywhere in the state.
Which you guys did today. And you have plans to take this in other places of Alaska, right?
Yep, we're actually going to be headed down to Homer with it later today.
Okay, very good. Eric, how does this fit into science learning around Alaska?
Well, you know what? I think it is a tool and it is a toy. And it brings out a smile from an 8-year-old and the smile from a 48-year-old with that inner 8-year-old wanting to get out. The sandbox, it's an interactive learning tool that teaches us how topography in the 3 dimensions is related to, say, a 2-dimensional map. More about that later. Just like George was saying, it's got a Kinect sensor, not just for video games anymore. It can sense out the lay of the land there, feeds that information in the computer. The computer identifies that, sends a signal to a projector to send topographic lines to map over that lumpy ground. So you get a 3-dimensional topo map out of it. And my favorite thing about it, this is the thing that stops people at the trade show, they stop at your booth and don't leave, is that you run your hand through that sandbox and it responds in real time. It remaps the topography as you get to be Mr. Tectonic Plate Drifter there. You can make things how you want. Well, what if we made a really high mountain here and a low valley there, and the lines adjust to what you did? It's a learning tool because it shows you that connection between these two-dimensional topo lines and what's really out in Alaska. And Alaska's a place with all kinds of topography. You know, we're from the Great Plains, where topo maps tend to be just like blank pieces of paper, but Alaska is particularly gifted in this regard, and this tool helps us, I think, learn more about our state, really.
Absolutely. And so this is going to enhance STEM learning, the science, technology, engineering, and math, in many different locations around Alaska. Then this would be something that kids and teachers can get their hands on.
It sure is. And I mentioned the it's like flypaper at a booth that, or at the Science Potpourri when we had Greg's original version of this sandbox, and that one was made out of scraps of wood, and it was a prototype. But even that one, before it had some of the refinements that George and crew have made for this newer, upscaled, maybe a 2.0 version of the sandbox, even that one was so attractive to people. It just demonstrated that this has potential to be a learning tool, an outreach tool, an education tool that now is portable and can go places in Alaska. Of course, there's only one sandbox, can't be everywhere at once, but hopefully it gets out there, gets the word out about EPSCoR and what science is being done here for Alaskans.
All right, that sounds really interesting, and I can't wait to get my hands in the sand and try this out for myself. We're going to demonstrate this here in our next segment of Alaska Weather Facts, but before we go, we want to remind you that EPSCoR, which is a new acronym for me now, but I'm going to remember this because you can follow them on Facebook and Twitter, and I invite you to do that. Alaska EPSCoR is also something that facilitates science learning at the University of Alaska around the state, and that stands for Experimental Program to Stimulate Competitive Research. So check that out, and make sure you tune in tomorrow because we're going to have the next version where we actually get our hands in the sand and check out how this works and demonstrates that topography. So for now, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder with this edition of Alaska Weather Facts, and we'll see you again next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back, and now it's time for the marine weather segment of our show. And in today's Sea Ice Edge, we continue to see the ice breaking up across the Bering, especially the northern half of the sea. And the Polinias that have opened up, definitely getting some more open water there, along with over the weekend, we did mention that there would probably be a bit of a south and westward drift to some of the ice with a northeasterly flow across the region, and indeed that was the case. But we now can see that the ice is really diminished there across the southwest coast, and in fact, Kuskokwim Bay is free of ice. The shoreline ice is pretty much broken up and pushed out. We still see shore-fast ice, though, up at the Yukon mouth, and that will continue to break up and give way here as we head through the week. Otherwise, just a normal progression as we would expect for this time of year for the sea ice breakup. In the marine forecast for Tuesday, the inner waterways will see northwest winds, Petersburg down toward Ketchikan, 15 knots, waves 2 or 3 feet. Still a southerly component there, Juneau up toward Skagway in the Lynn Canal. And then along coastal areas, west-northwest winds 15 to 20 knots and swells generally between 4 and 7 feet. For Wednesday, look for south winds, the inner waterways from Petersburg northward past Juneau, with swells there of 3 to 4 feet, and then along the coast winds will be west-northwest 10 to 15 knots and generally swells running 4 to 5 feet. Across south-central areas, Prince William Sound westerly winds 10 knots, waves 2 feet. But off the Kenai and the mouth of Cook Inlet, we're looking at westerly winds of 20 knots and swells around 5 feet. For Wednesday, winds will be still a southeasterly component. The outlier there in Prince William Sound, waves a couple of feet, but down toward the mouth of Cook Inlet and off of Kodiak Island, southeast winds will be picking up 20 to 25 knots, swells 5 to 7 feet. And going across the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island, winds will be out of the west across the northern areas there at about 15 to 20 knots, waves 4 feet on the North Pacific and Gulf side, and picking up to 30 knots off of Sand Point out of the east, with 6-foot swells there on the Pacific side and only 2-foot swells on the Bering side. But as an area of low pressure and occluded front lift northward across the region, we'll see winds increasing upwards to 30 knots out of the east, with swells on the Pacific and Gulf side building to around 10-11 feet and 6 to 9 feet on the Bering side. Looking at the Aleutian chain, winds will be out of the east-northeast across most of the Aleutian chain, upwards to 30 knots there south of Nikolsky and Unalaska, Dutch Harbor, with waves up to 10 feet. And then as the low pressure passes by just to the east on Wednesday, we expect the winds to turn around on the backside to the north and northwest, upwards to 30 knots, with swells around 10 to 12 feet on the Pacific side and 8 to 11 feet on the Bering side. For the west coast, winds in the open waters at St. Paul, St. George will be out of the east at 15 knots, waves a couple of feet. As we go upwards, winds still with a west-northwest component along the west shore, and waves generally a foot or two. Then into Wednesday, we'll see more northeasterly winds set up, especially the open waters, upwards to 25 knots and swells of 6 to 7 feet from off of Nunavik Island down towards St. Paul and St. George. And along the Arctic coast, winds will be out of the east at 15 to 20 knots, with some areas of freezing fog and patchy light snow or flurries. And down along the northwest coast, still northwesterly component to the wind coming into Kotzebue Sound at around 10 knots. And for Tuesday's weather, low pressure will linger across the interior of Alaska. We'll still have high pressure there out over the west coast, producing areas of low cloudiness and patchy fog. The Arctic coast will continue to see patchy freezing fog and some light snow. And then out south of the eastern Aleutians, we have an area of low pressure and occluded front lifting up from the north and west, so that by Wednesday that low will be one of the dominant features, with the occluded front approaching the south end there of the Alaska Peninsula, with areas of rain and patchy fog. And one program change notice and reminder: starting this Thursday, May 20th, the Alaska Weather Show will air at 6:30 p.m. for those of you that view on KTOO 360 TV. So again, coming up this Thursday, the show will start at 6:30 instead of 7 p.m. Otherwise, have a great evening and thanks for watching.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.